Alrighty, welcome back, fellas. So, I've been hearing from a few of you guys how difficult the Battle Hardened Formidable Foes event can be. Obviously, one of the new events for the 10th anniversary. So today, I want to go ahead and try to help you guys out by sharing some tips and tricks that can make the event a lot easier for you and also improve your chances to win all the various stages within the event itself. So today, we're going to go ahead and try to help you guys out. Hopefully, you guys will enjoy the vid. If you do, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. We are on the road to 1K subs. It is a ways away, but we are going to try to push for that. And also, comment down below your thoughts. Let me know what other things you guys like some help with in the comments down below. Let's go ahead and get started. So today, I have 5 to 6 tips that I would try to give you guys just to help you guys out. Now, I do want to say before we get into the tips, this does not mean that with these tips, you are going to be invincible and you will win every single time. Rotations can still be bad, your luck may be just not there, and sometimes you just may not have the teams necessary to get the job done. But still, with these tips, this will make your experience a lot easier than if you didn't use these tips beforehand. So let's go ahead and just get into this, starting off with tip number 1. Now, I don't know if I necessarily have an order in terms of how important these tips are compared to each other, but this one is excruciatingly important, I will say that. And tip number 1 is to know your bosses, know your opponents, because knowing is half the battle. That's a saying right there, and it makes perfect sense, because especially when it comes to this, if you know what your opponents can or cannot do, you can plan around that. You can go ahead and plan what your team composition should be to allow you to have the best chance for success. So to show you guys how to do that, we have a wonderful resource right here, Dokkan Info. If you guys don't use this website, I highly recommend that you do so. You go ahead, just pull up Dokkan Info right here. On the side, you can pick the different versions or everything, or different languages if you guys need translations or whatever. So right now, this is like the global version, if you will. This is like the international version. This is like the global translated of the JP version. So there's stuff like that. But regardless, I digress. You go into Dokkan Info, you go into the events tab down here, go into challenge, and then once you go into challenge, I'll show you guys right here. You scroll to the bottom, you'll see right there, one of the newer stages, Battle Hardened Formidable Foes. So I have that pulled up right here just in case. But basically with this, you see right here all of the different stages. You also see all of the missions for those specific stages. And, you know, we got the new, like, Stage 9, Stage 10. If you're like, hey, I wonder what the Stage 9 bosses look like, go ahead and click that section right there, and bam, you see all the stats, all the, like, the juicy details of what these opponents can do, all the different phases, all the different bosses, all of that good stuff. So again, knowing is half the battle, and when you can know what these bosses can do, that will give you a significant advantage as opposed to just going into it blind. So that is very important. Obviously, like, if we look at Beerus and Whis, or Beerus right here, for example, right, we can see what the super attack effects can do. We can see right here with Beerus and Whis that they're boosting their attack by 50% for the first 3 turns. You know, they're also going to be more dangerous when their HP is lower than 40%, so we got to be careful there. Right here, this is a prime example of knowing the bosses and using it to our advantage, because I know right here, the second phase of Beerus gets a bonus to his attack percentage when we have a Realm of Gods category character, so I can just go ahead and deliberately avoid taking a Realm of Gods character so that I can prevent Beerus from getting this type of boost. Same thing with Freezer right down here, right? So he's getting an attack boost when there is a Movie Heroes category character. I can go ahead and avoid this by just not bringing a Movie Heroes category character because I know this going into the fight. So knowing is half the battle. It is significantly important in that respect. You can see all sorts of things right here. So this is all some good stuff right here. Even like the Broly right here, you know, boosting his attack when there's a Fuse Fighter ally. So, you know, all sorts of things you can just learn just by looking at the information. So definitely take advantage of this. Another kind of example to this point is right here with the Movie Edition Part 2. So, you know, a lot of people have been saying that there are certain characters who are really good for these types of fights, which I will say that is going to be another tip in just a moment. But, you know, with that being said, there are certain bosses where they have gimmicks that can prevent you from using those types of characters. And a prime example is right here on Stage 4 with Android 13. Because in his base form, you will see he is able to disable dodge right away, turn 1, frame 1, and guaranteed attacks landing. So a good character for a lot of these fights for a lot of people is AGL MUI Goku. However, for Stage 4 specifically, MUI Goku is not going to be that guy. The reason being is that right here, even though he has all these other bosses that he can handle, this boss right here with Android 13, he's disabling dodge, which means MUI Goku cannot do anything to protect himself other than just tanking hits, which he's not really meant to do that. So in that respect, again, you need to know what these bosses can do, because that will be the difference between you having a more easy, simple run and maybe you fighting for your life in a lot of these challenges, right? So that's important to know right there. Again, use Dokkan Info, use the events section, go to challenge, find the event, then go ahead right here. You'll see all the different stages. Click the stage you're looking into, and you can know what the different bosses can do. You can see the stats, what their gimmicks are, all that important stuff. So yeah, definitely take advantage of all of that knowledge. Now, tip number 2, which I did kind of mention earlier, is to take characters who are tailor-made for this type of fight. So, for anyone who doesn't know, basically Battle Hardened Formidable Foes is like a super amped up version of Super Battle Road or Extreme Super Battle Road, where basically, you know, all the stages, they have multiple boss fights, right? Like 3 or 4 bosses right here. Like this is the first stage, right? Jackie Chun is like the first boss right here. Then the second one's Tien. Third one's Demon King Piccolo. Fourth one is Piccolo Jr., right? Each boss is there, so 4 bosses, but each boss is 2 phases, right? So all of the fights are very short in terms of length, but there are a lot of different fights. So in that respect, you want to take characters who are really good for short phase fights, for very like minimum length fights, right? Who are able to get ready out the gate. So in that sort of respect, I mean, some great characters, for example, in that sort of aspect, you know, if I can go ahead and find one would be like Tech Broly. Tech Broly, a lot of people stand by Tech Broly being a fantastic character for these fights, and it makes perfect sense because in these short fights, you need characters who can tank out the gate, get things going safely, so that you can get your better characters to be ready to go as the fight progresses. So Broly is a great example of this, where turn 1 for that first turn in his base form is 90% damage reduction plus guard in slot 1, so he can tank like no one's business, and then of course he can transform after that. You know, another great character for a lot of people is Beast Gohan. Beast Gohan, I will say, you know, like I'm not the biggest Beast fan. He is taking some damage nowadays from here and there in the different boss fights. That's more so a testament to him just getting older, because he is a year old at this point, but still, he is pretty good for a lot of those stages because he is able to just get ready to fight out the gate with his intro condition, all this stuff built in guard. So those are the types of characters to consider. I did talk about how MUI cannot work in stage 4 because of 13, but still, MUI Goku with EZA, very powerful, because for that first turn he shows up, guaranteed dodge against every attack thrown his way. So slot 1, slot 2, slot 3, does not matter, he will protect you regardless. So that is very helpful. Also, to MUI's credit, even though this is not really like meant to emphasize his value in like Battle Hardened Formidable Foes specifically, but he does have a revival that's easy to access. So if things go a bit sideways for you, you can have MUI with his revival to give you an extra kind of cushion. But, you know, really, it's this turn 1 ability right here that makes him so valuable for me and for a lot of people. AGL Full Power Freeze is another example of this, where, you know, he has a bunch of damage reduction. First turn, he has guaranteed guard. He really works well in slot 1, which is something you want to have in these types of fights. And also, he has a bunch of stat boosts for the first 6 turns from the character's entry, which kind of emphasizes the point that he's meant for these shorter phase fights, these, like, you know, a few turn type of fights, right? So, you know, take characters who are built for this type of action, right? You know, characters like, for example, in Namagoku, I love in Namagoku, but he is not meant for this type of action. He is not ready for the smoke because he needs time to get stronger. Now, if push comes to shove, if you have no other options, yes, you can take a character like in Namagoku. However, again, he's not meant for these fights, so you're going to have a lot more trouble trying to make him work and trying to make him safe and secure, as opposed to taking a character like AGL Full Power Frieza, you know, MUI Goku, Tech Broly. So that is important to know. Take characters who are better suited for these types of fights, especially based off what you know by knowing your bosses, which again was from tip 1. Tip 2 right now, just bring characters that are better suited for these fights. Now, tip number 3, which kind of goes in tandem with this, is in general, know what your units can and cannot do. Now, this is one of those things where, especially as a newer player, it may seem a bit difficult, but if you take the time, you will get better at this and you will learn. And of course, you can always ask questions to myself or all sorts of other content creators. You can always learn from others and from just reading and playing the game yourself. So, you know, when I talk about that, you know, a prime example of that, for example, is like the 10th anniversary fusions, right? So like, you know, AGL Vegeta right here, I believe the Tech Goku's right here, so Tech Vegeta right here, AGL Gogeta, both of them are very powerful characters. A lot of people have them tied for their number 1 spot, right? However, neither of these characters are meant to be slot 1 characters to start the fight off. They are meant to be slot 2 and slot 3. If you try them in slot 1 as the Tech Goku or the AGL Vegeta, you are going to get cooked. However, once you get the exchange going by turn 4, once you go into turn 5 for the fusions, then things can change. Then you can use them in slot 1, you can use them for their dominating power, you can do all sorts of stuff at that point in time. But again, to begin the fight, those two characters are not really meant for slot 1 viability. They're meant for slot 2 and slot 3. So you need to know what your characters can or cannot do. I know these guys are going to be great for slot 2 and slot 3. I will stick them there, and I know they're not really meant for slot 1, so I'll try to avoid it as best as I can. You know, if we keep providing examples of this kind of focus, right? Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, a fantastic character in slot 2 and slot 3, so consistent. I love this unit, but he is not meant for slot 1 value. He does not have the kit for slot 1, so that is important to consider. If we keep going, Grade 8 Vegeta, right? You know, the Saiyan Saga Vegeta. He is a different story, right? He's a character with built-in guard, a bunch of damage reduction in slot 1. However, he's losing most of his damage reduction in slot 2 and slot 3. So really, he's meant to be a slot 1 character. So know what your characters can and cannot do. Again, you know, if we want to talk about two like really important characters right now, the Tech Super Saiyan Gods and the Physical Super Saiyan 4s, the Year 7 EZAs, both of them are incredibly powerful characters, you know, in terms of what they can or cannot do, because in the first turn, they have a bunch of damage reduction. So this damage reduction, what it's doing is it is allowing them to just overall dominate and just do a lot of work in slot 1 in that first turn, and then afterwards then you can like deal with them stacking and everything, go into turn 4, then you can fuse into their like ascended forms, or with Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta or the Tech Super Saiyan Blues. But you know, at that point, you know, they're going to be very dominant, you know, with the scouters, with the counters, all the damage outputs. So again, know what your characters can do, know what they cannot do, use that all to your advantage. I implore you, this is one of those things that if you don't know what your characters are doing and you don't know what they can do, you are going to set yourself up for failure, and you're just going to be at the mercy of luck. But if you know what you're doing, if you know what your characters can do, then you will have a much easier time, because then you can plan ahead and show off that 5,000 IQ that I know you guys possess. Speaking of that though, you know, tip number 4, this is kind of like a mini tip, if you will, so I wasn't sure if I want to call it like tip number 4 or tip like 3.5 or whatever, but this tip is really going to be, I'm just going to call it tip number 4. Tip number 4 is to take 2 to 3 slot 1 characters at minimum. Now, I'm not talking about slot 1 characters like, you know, even like the 10th anniversary fusions where, you know, they can eventually be slot 1 characters. I am talking about characters who are slot 1, turn 1, right away. They can get ready to go out the gate. So that includes characters like the Tech Super Saiyan Gods, the 7th year EZAs, of course. That includes a character like, for example, you know, Tech Broly, like AGL MUI Goku, like Full Power Frieza, you know, Beast Gohan. So those characters who are built for like the early part of a fight, make sure to take at least 2 to 3 of them, because that way you give yourselves as much of a good chance of having nice, powerful characters for all your rotations, so that way you can be as safe as possible. So that's my suggestion right there. That is a very good idea, I would say, for a lot of people, because yes, you could choose to take only one character. Like, you know, say you only have the Tech Gods, you could be like, hey, I only need one slot 1 character, all the other characters I got are so powerful, like Super Saiyan 2 Gohan and them, I'm good. That is true, they're powerful, but you still will have a rotation where things can get kind of messy. So you want to basically give yourself the best chance of success, and the best chance of success includes bringing slot 1 characters for at least a few of those turns, so that way by like turn 4, turn 5, you can transform, you can get your better characters going, and then from there, you can cook. So that is a very important thing right there. The next thing I want to cover, right, this is like, you know, tip number 5 really, is to know what you're able to do. Understand what you're allowed to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to transition to the my phone, which is like recording right now because I'm like recording the gameplay. So when we look at the phone side of things, obviously like the actual game side of things, the gameplay, with Battle Hardened Formidable Foes, if we go into stage 9 right here, obviously Super 3 difficulty, you'll see right here, you are allowed to take 4 items, count them 1, 2, 3, 4 items, plus you're able to take a support memory. Now, I understand a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to use items, I don't want to be one of those item users. Listen, if you gotta use items, use them. Whatever it takes to get the win, that is what you should do. At the end of the day, we're not fighting each other, we're fighting the system. Do you know what I'm saying? So we're trying to win the game, of course, so we're trying to have some fun, and we're trying to get the Dragon Stones and, you know, beat the mission. So, you know, if you have to use items, go ahead and do so. Right now, this is stage 9, of course. You know, when I look at it, when I look at all my different friends and everything, like people who beat the event and everything, they are using items right now. Of course, item usage with support memories, all sorts of stuff right here. We look at this person right here, you know, 2 Icaruses, 1 of the Princess Snake, and 2 Whis. You know, that is what is necessary to get the job done in some cases, and that is okay. Sometimes you don't have the best teams to offer. Even if you have some of the best teams, you still can get a bit cooked. So that is what I'm trying to say, is that if you need to use items, if you need to use support memories to your advantage to get the job done, use it. Whatever it takes to get the win, do it, and make sure that you secure yourself the best possible chance of succeeding. Don't worry about what the haters say about, oh, I'm using items, I'm not using items, or whatever. Whatever it takes to get the win, that is what matters. So that's tip number 5 for you. Use what is allowed. So that is obviously something you can take advantage of with the items. Definitely use it to your advantage. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, and this is something I'm actually going to go ahead and go into like one of the earlier stages to kind of show this off, right? But the final kind of tip I would like to give for you guys, right? Tip number 6 here. Tip number 6 is going to be to manage your rotation. So we're going to go ahead with this team right here and just go into like the early Dragon Ball Edition kind of fight right here. So obviously there's a start, get out of the way please, there we go. So when we go into the first kind of fight right here against Jackie Chun, right? So obviously our first rotation is something like this. So we have Tech Broly in the middle right there, so we can move him around, of course, but we have the 10th anniversary fusions, and then in our next rotation we have the Tech Gods and the Super Saiyan 4s. Now this is what I was saying earlier, where you want to take 2 to 3 slot 1 characters, because look at what just happened. We have a slot 1 character right here, and then we have our 2 other slot 1 characters in the Tech Gods and the physical Super Saiyan 4s on turn 2. So what if we didn't take Broly? Well, now we wouldn't have another slot 1 character. Now this rotation would look a lot more dangerous. So, you know, in that sort of respect, that is what I would say right there, where you want to make sure to give yourself 2 to 3 slot 1 characters at minimum. That'll give you the best chance of comfortable success going through these fights. The other thing is managing our rotation. So no matter what, you want to make sure that you keep a slot 1 character on both sides of the field, no matter what. So That's very important. We'll go ahead and just kind of get Broly through here. The reason why I say that you need to make sure to manage your rotations like this is because these fights, obviously, as you guys can probably tell, once you beat a fight like Jackie Chun, for example, then you move on to the next fight, and the next fight will maintain the rotations from your previous fight. So if I decide to finish off Jackie Chun right here and float off all of my slot 1 characters, right, or like I float off the Super Saiyan 4s or Broly or something, there may be a situation where one of my rotations will not have a slot 1 character. And in that situation, I will be setting myself up for failure. I will be basically shooting myself in the foot. And that is something you don't want to do in these types of fights. You really can't afford to do so because, I mean, these fights can do some damage. They can do some crazy work. So in that respect, you want to give yourselves the best chance to succeed. Again, previous tips, like I mentioned, knowing your opponents, that's a major one. Building teams that are built for this sort of stuff, understanding what your characters can do, all those sorts of things, but also managing your rotations. Knowing what the bosses can do, that's all well and good. Having the right team comp, that's all well and good. You know, having some slot 1 characters, all of that is well and good. However, if I set my rotations in such a way that I accidentally have all 3 of my slot 1 characters on one turn and no one on the other turn, then I'm screwed. Then I'm in deep doo-doo. I'm in deep trouble. So this is what I'm saying, you know, you can do all these tips, but you're still not invincible, and you really need a combination of these tips to really give yourselves the best chance of succeeding. Obviously, we have the Tech Gods who are in slot 1, so they can tank for this first turn. We're kind of just going through this fight right now, but I'll stop this after the Jackie Chun kind of portion right here. But again, managing rotations, so important. And also, like, we're talking about this, understanding the kits, right? Like, it's important to manage rotations. I also understand that, you know, the Tech Gods are great slot 1. So I'm going to keep them in slot 1. I don't necessarily need to keep the Super Saiyan 4s in slot 2, though I can do so, but I'm going to go ahead and float them off because Broly, I know he's going to lose a bit of his turn 1 viability in just a second. So that is something like where you got to know what you're doing. So these are the tips that I recommend for you guys. Again, let me make this absolutely, positively crystal clear. These tips will not ensure you a guaranteed 100% chance of success against these fights. However, they will really drastically improve your chances, especially if you're using these tips in tandem with each other, right? If you're combining them together, then you will be super powerful. You'll be just in a much better position than you would be otherwise. So that is what I'll say right there. And yeah, I mean, obviously we're going into the second phase right here. I'll go ahead and finish the second phase to just kind of show off my point here, I guess. But, you know, like, we have turn 3. Broly, I know he's no longer going to be able to do his 90% damage reduction. I'll go ahead and let him go into the Legendary Super Saiyan. We'll go ahead, you know, keep Broly in slot 1. We'll keep Vegeta here in slot 2 and just keep it pushing, because again, the 10th anniversary fusions, I know they cannot do slot 1 work, so I'm not going to try to test them. Broly tanking like he can, because slot 1 is where he's meant to be, especially with the 76% damage reduction right here. These are the things that I know from experience. These are the things that you can learn, or you probably already know from your own experiences. You can obviously ask me or any sort of content creator or anyone in general. There's a lot of Discord servers from content creators as well, where a lot of people will give insight and advice and tell you how to use teams and how to use characters. So you can always ask questions, right? Ask questions, always try to learn, and also, you know, again, these tips, you got to use them together. The one tip I will say that you may not necessarily have to rely on is the item usage. I've actually beaten all the like first 8 stages without items, but I know for like these last few stages, they are a bit challenging, stage 9, stage 10, so maybe you'll have to use items for them. However, I'm not you. You are not me. We have different accounts. If you need to use items even for stage 1, that's okay. Whatever gets the job done, you can use all these sorts of tips to your advantage. Maybe you already have been using them. If you guys have any other tips, by the way, let me know in the comments down below what other tips you guys would recommend for each other. We're trying to help each other out, of course. You know, I try my best to kind of give you guys a general set of tips, but at the same time, there may be some other things that I didn't consider that maybe you guys can share. So if you guys got some other tips, let me know and let everyone else know in the comments down below. But yeah, we're going through this now. Jackie Chun doing his Kamehameha wave. That actually did some decent damage against my Vegeta, so I'm actually kind of disappointed in Vegeta there. But still, I mean, you know, all things considered, we were pretty fine there. And now we have everything working in our favor. So of course we have the Grade A transformation, we have the Super Saiyan Blues. We are done though, because now we're going to go ahead and transform, get our active skill, and let's go ahead and wipe Jackie Chun off the face of the earth real quick with a Soul Punisher. Bam. And yeah, there you go. So yeah, that's awesome, of course. But now let's go ahead and just show this off right now. You see, of course, we have our rotations now. So we just finished the fight. We're going into the second fight. I'm going to end this fight right here, just in terms of like this whole thing. But just to re-emphasize the point, rotations, 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 manage them. Because now we kept Broly on this rotation. We kept the Tech Gods on the other rotation, so that's good. And now we have the Super Saiyan 4s on this rotation as well, because they were floated off earlier. Now, hypothetically, if last turn I went ahead and took the Super Saiyan Blues and put them in slot 3, they would not be in the next rotation for me to use them to my advantage. So that next turn, I would have no slot 1 characters that I could really trust, and that would be a very serious issue. So again, manage your rotations and just make sure to do the best you can to set yourself up for success. So there you go. That's going to be how we want to go ahead and focus on this. This is going to be where I wrap up the vid. Now, again, to reiterate these tips, just to kind of talk about them in general, right? So I'll go ahead and go back into the main kind of Dokkan info kind of page right here. So going back to the general thing, right? So first thing is first, know your opponents, right? Tip number 1, know your opponents, because that is going to be what helps you the most. Knowing is half the battle, so know your opponents. Tip number 2, take characters who are tailor-made for these types of fights. Characters built for short fights, like Tech Broly, like Beast Gohan, like Agile MUI Goku, like Agile Full Power Frieza. Take characters like them who are meant for these short fights and use them to your advantage. Tip number 3, use characters, but also know what they can and cannot do, right? Obviously, characters like the 7th year EZAs, they can be turn 1 slot 1 for the first turn, and then afterwards you may want to adjust them. But characters like the 10th anniversary fusions or Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, they're not meant for slot 1 to start things off. They're meant for slot 2 or slot 3. So know what your characters can or cannot do. Tip number 4, which is like a bit of a minor tip, make sure to take at least 2 to 3 slot 1 characters. That will help you out the most. Tip number 5, if you need to use them, use the items, use the support memories, use what is allowed, use it to your advantage to get yourself the win, because at the end of the day, that is what matters the most. And then tip number 6, manage your rotations. Even if you're using the best teams, even if you're using items, make sure that you manage your rotations and set yourself up as best as possible. So there you go. That's going to be all the 6 tips that I'm going to provide you guys to hopefully help you guys make a much better, easier experience for yourselves for Battle Hardened Formidable Foes. Hopefully you guys will enjoy the vid. Again, if you enjoyed the vid, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. Again, we are pushing for 1K subs. Comment down below your thoughts. Let me know what else would you guys like help with, in terms of tips or tricks or anything like that. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.